Today marks the 20th anniversary of the Bali bombings, the terrorist attack that killed 202 people, including 88 Australians, on the holiday island. Sky News reporter Adam Walters was in Bali for a month as police hunted those responsible, and he looks back on the day that shook our nation.
For so long, an evil of distant lands, terrorism exploded on Australia's doorstep.
We were in the hotel, we heard a massive explosion preceded by a very small one. Like there was a small bang, very, very loud explosion, and then just shattering glass everywhere.
The death toll would reach 202, 88 of those killed Australian.
It was one blast, an explosion at the start, and about 2 seconds later there was another explosion, and that's when the buildings started to collapse. More
than 240 others were injured.
It was just a procession of people covered in blood, covered in glass, glass shards embedded into people. People's backs had obviously been on fire. It was just horrible.
You just remember how the blast just knocked you on your back and you just thinking, just don't die, just don't die.
We're finding fractures, we're finding people who've actually been impaled upon things, flying glass, debris.
The local hospital was soon overflowing. Scores of Australians suffering severe burns were flown for emergency surgery in Perth and Darwin, some beyond recognition.
If you saw the patients that came in, you wouldn't be but traumatised unless you weren't a human being.
The first blast was detonated remotely from a mobile phone with little impact outside the US consulate. The second bomb was concealed in the backpack of a suicide bomber in the popular Paddy's pub in the heart of the tourist hotspot Kuta. Moments later, across the road, more than a ton of explosives in a van was ignited by another suicide bomber, flattening the beer garden known as the Sari Club and 27 neighbouring buildings. Stories of narrow escapes were rare.
We were lucky where we were because it wasn't really much of a roof, so only the brick wall fell on us instead.
As survivors threw themselves into resort swimming pools to ease the pain of their burns, others prayed it was just a nightmare.
Sometimes you just start shaking and it's just shock when reality kicks in. I keep thinking, maybe I'll just wake up and it'll be a bad dream, but that's not going to happen.
The first memory that really sticks with me 20 years ago was possibly the girl that landed at my feet during the first blast, and just that image of me being isolated with her and thinking we were the only people in that nightclub was something that sort of resonates a bit with me.
The Islamist group Jamaat Islamiyah was immediately suspected as responsible. A week after the blast, Arab news channel Al Jazeera broadcast a voice message purporting to be from Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden, claiming the Bali attacks were retaliation for those supporting the US war on terror and Australia's role in backing the liberation of East Timor. It was a scenario earlier rejected by then Prime Minister John Howard.
I think that's a totally inaccurate proposition.
Indonesian police rounded up the suspects quickly. The three ringleaders were executed 8 years later. The bomb maker, Umar Patek, has been granted an early release after serving just half of a 20-year sentence following his 2011 capture in Pakistan. When John Howard returned to Bali for the 10th anniversary in 2012, he declared the mission of the terrorists a complete failure.
They may have hoped that they would have driven Indonesia and Australia further apart. Instead of that, they brought Indonesia and Australia closer together.
Bali remains more popular than ever, with Australian tourists flocking to the island with the easing of the COVID crisis. But for survivors and the loved ones of those lost, it'll always represent the very worst of times.
When I hear of the 88 Australians that died, I always shed a tear because my beautiful daughter Simone was number 88.
There's the constant reminder of what could have been for West Australian Kevin Paltridge, who lost his son Corey.
I mean, he's just a great kid, he loved life, and they're things you miss is what was going to be with him. You know, he was going to have kids because he loved kids.
For those who lost family and friends, 2012, 2022 and 2032 might be tidy numbers as milestones of remembrance, but do nothing to remove the daily emotional mess created by such indiscriminate brutality. Adam Walters, Sky News.
And do tune in at 10 o'clock this morning Eastern Daylight Time today, folks, for live coverage of commemoration services across Australia marking the 20th anniversary of the bombings. There will be commemoration services later on in Kuta in Bali as well.